Welcome back to Spaces and Shadows. You are listening to episode 2 of my 911 Lone Star fanfiction titled Selfish and Selfless. Headphones are recommended. This audio feature mature LGBTQ plus themes, sexual references, and sound effects that may be unsettling for certain listeners. Discretion is advised. The text may be found in my archive of our own profile. Link is in the description.
Previously on 911 Lone Star by Spaces and Shadows.
Hi, I'm Donnie Miller, the new transfer from NYPD.
Maybe you can consider this as an opportunity for you to get a promotion, Officer Reyes. Hey PD, show me your hands! In the air! Right now!
Great shot, Carlos. You saved me. You did good.
Not good enough, Sergeant. The suspect got away. TK, what if one day I'm not good enough for you? Or anything at all? Will you still love me? Baby, when I asked you to marry me that night, it was because I love all of you. Each and every piece of you. Baby, this is the part you say I do. Carlos? Carlos? Carlos! Carlos! TK. Carlos! Carlos! Somebody call 911! Oh my god, Carlos, stay with me! Stay with me, baby, stay with me.
911, what's your emergency?
My fiancé is being shot. We're at Greenview Resorts by Lake Bastrop. Please hurry. He's losing a lot of blood.
Hang in there, baby. Help's coming. TK said, trying to put pressure on Carlos to stop the bleeding. Somebody bring a first aid kit! Oh my god. Carlos, stay with me. Carlos, stay with me. Baby, just hang tight, okay? Baby, just hang tight and stay with me. Just hang tight, baby. Baby, I'm right here. Don't fall asleep. Hey! Baby, look at me. Look at me. You gotta stay awake. Baby, look at me. Don't fall asleep. You gotta stay awake. Baby, you gotta fight. You gotta fight. Come on, Carlos. Baby.
Get everything prepared. There is no time to waste. Sir, you need to stay back.
TK watched as the doctor and nurses pushed Carlos into the emergency room. As the doors swing to a close, TK looked up to the ceiling with his hands interlocked behind his neck, walking slowly in circles. TK was in tears and could only think about the worst that could happen. What if Carlos never make it out of the emergency room? What if he has to return to an empty house for the rest of his days? TK's knees couldn't support the weight of his thoughts, and they fell to the floor. TK's father, Owen, emerged from the corner in his uniform. He ran towards TK and dropped to his knees to give TK a tight, comforting hug. As Owen held on tightly to TK, he could feel TK's tears dripping on his shoulders. Owen felt an immense surge of anger and heartache. He couldn't stand seeing his son in this state. What monster did this? Who would do such a thing to hurt his son and future son-in-law? He knew no words could calm TK down. So he continued to kneel on the floor and kept TK in his embrace as TK let out a loud, ugly cry. A minute went by and TK became silent. Owen noticed TK's abnormal breathing. His body was weakening and his arms let go of the embrace. He had become so weak from crying and collapsed to his side. Owen yelled for assistance and the nurses came running to check on TK. Owen shed a tear as he watched the nurses try to help a semi-conscious TK. Carlos's parents, Andrea and Gabriel, stormed in at this moment to witness the situation. Andrea covered her mouth in shock and turned to Owen for answers. The doctors are doing all they can to save Carlos. Have faith, Owen said, trying to maintain his calm. Who would do such a thing to our boys? Andrea cried as she leaned to Gabriel while Gabriel caressed her head. Several hours went by. TK was alone in the waiting room after giving a statement to the police. He looked out the window to see Andrea resting her head on Gabriel's shoulder as they sat quietly on the chairs outside the operating room. TK hadn't said a word to Carlos's parents. TK couldn't bring himself to face them. He felt guilty and responsible for what happened to their son. Owen walked into the waiting room with 2 cups of coffee from the vending machine. Coffee? Owen said as he hands a cup to TK. Thanks, Dad. TK grabbed and took a sip from the paper cup. How are you feeling, son? Owen said as he sat down beside TK. The nurse checked and I'm fine, Dad. You don't have to worry about me. Hey, you just witnessed your fiancé get shot. I know you're not okay. Seriously, Dad, I'm fine. It's Carlos we have to worry about, TK said as he looked into the cup of coffee he was holding with both hands. His index fingers gave rhythmic taps on the cup. TK, Carlos is tougher than a bull. He's gonna pull through. I'm sure of it, Owen said, giving a smile to TK. I hope so. Dad, you don't have to be here. I'll be fine. You got a firehouse to run. The 126 is in good hands, son. I got Judd to take over the role of captain while I'm gone, Owen said, taking another sip of the coffee. Dad, TK said as he leaned forward to rest his forearms on his knees. I don't know what to say to Mr. and Mrs. Reyes. I feel responsible for what happened to Carlos. He didn't deserve this. TK, let me tell you something. Owen put his cup down on the coffee table in front of them. This isn't your fault, and it sure as hell isn't what Carlos deserved. But his parents already knew that, TK. Love always comes with risk. And I know if Carlos was given a choice, he would do this all over again, Owen said as he looked into a teary-eyed TK. You need to have faith, son. And you need to stay strong for whatever happens. Carlos is going to be fine, and we will get to the bottom of this, Owen said with his arm across TK's shoulder to comfort him. TK wiped his face dry, took a deep breath and walked out of the waiting room. He took slow steps towards Andrea and Gabriel, who were falling asleep and unaware of his approach. Mr. and Mrs. Reyes, TK said as he stood in front of Andrea and Gabriel, rubbing his fingers against his hands. I'm sorry, I didn't mean for this to happen. Oh, TK, come here. Andrea interrupted, stood up from her seat and pulled TK in for a hug. This isn't your fault, my dear. I'm so sorry for what you must have been through, Andrea said. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm sorry, TK said under his breath as he cried. Andrea hushed TK and kept him in her embrace, gently swaying left to right to comfort him. Gabriel turned to see Owen standing by the door of the waiting room. He stood up from his seat and said, "We're gonna get to the bottom of this. We're gonna find out who did this to our sons. And make that son of a bitch pay," Gabriel said as he clenched his fist, and Owen nodded to acknowledge. The doors of the operating room swung open with force, and the doctor walked out.
"Mr. and Mrs. Reyes,"
the doctor said with a serious face, as everyone stood still, hoping to hear good news.
"the bullet went straight through and missed his vital organs."
There was a short, suspenseful pause as the doctor turned her attention to Andrea, who was covering her mouth with one hand and the other holding on to a chaplet.
"But I'm pleased to tell you that the surgery went well and your son is in stable condition."
The doctor said with a smile.
Oh my God. Oh my God. Thank you. Thank you, doctor.
There was a collective sigh of relief. Andrea hugged Gabriel and TK ran towards Owen for an embrace. I told you he's gonna be fine. It was a little past 4 a.m. in the morning. TK was alone with Carlos in the recovery suite. TK hadn't gotten any sleep except for the little naps he took on the uncomfortable couch at the corner of the suite. Aside from bathroom breaks or buying coffee from the vending machine, he refused to leave Carlos out of his sight, as he wanted to be the first thing that Carlos sees when he wakes up. TK was standing by the window, exchanging several texts with Marjan. He assured her that he was taking care of himself and getting some sleep. He slid his phone into his pocket, sat on a chair beside Carlos's bed, and started to run his fingers through Carlos's curly hair. "Carlos, come back to me, baby," TK whispered. "I'm right here, and I'm not going anywhere. But you gotta wake up soon, because I can't stand seeing you like this." TK raised and kissed Carlos's limped hand and then rubbed his face on Carlos's hand. "That night, when I said that you were good enough for me, I was wrong," TK said as he gave another kiss on Carlos's hand. "You were more than enough for me. You gave me all of you and you never held back. And sometimes I feel like I don't deserve you." TK sighed and a tear rolled down his cheeks. "Call me selfish, but I want you to be okay, just so that I can be okay too. I need you, Carlos, and I want you all to myself." TK took a moment to wipe off the tears that was falling off his face and tightened his grip on Carlos's hand. "Because the truth is, I wouldn't be alive today if it weren't for you, Carlos. My life becomes meaningless without you." TK closed his eyes as he sniffled, trying to contain the tears that was endlessly falling off his face, landing on Carlos's arms and wetting the sheets. "TK." A groan and a dry voice was heard. TK jumped when he felt Carlos's fingers twitched within the grip of his hands. He looked up to see Carlos's face frowning and his eyes squinting to adjust himself to the lights in the room. "Nurse! Nurse!" TK yelled as Carlos groaned, slowly regaining consciousness. "TK." TK impatiently waited outside the room as the nurse and doctor checked on Carlos. He was pacing up and down, ready to be reunited with Carlos as soon as they were done. Carlos watched as the doctor and nurse stepped out to speak with TK. After a minute, TK bolted through the doors and launched himself on top of Carlos's body, giving him a tight hug, followed by a kiss on the forehead. Ouch. Take it easy, babe. Carlos laughed. It slipped TK's mind that Carlos was recovering from a gunshot wound. Oh, I'm sorry, babe. I'm just so happy that you're finally awake, TK said as he adjusted himself to sit beside Carlos on the bed and leaned in to kiss Carlos on the lips. We're not gonna make it to the wedding, are we? Carlos said with his dry voice. Doctor said you have to be here for the next few days, TK said as Carlos gave a disappointed look. I'm sorry, Carlos said. No, this isn't your fault, and I don't want you to ever feel that it is. We can have another wedding when you're better, TK said, holding on to Carlos's hand. Baby, I thought I've lost you, TK whispered. I know, I heard you, Carlos said. No way! You weren't supposed to hear all of that. TK chuckled and pulled Carlos's hand to his face. I love you, TK. I love you more, Carlos. Carlos insisted to be discharged from the hospital after 2 days of being kept under observation. The doctor prescribed him with a ton of medicine and scheduled him for a follow-up appointment to remove his stitches within the next few days. Okay, so take 2 pills after breakfast and 2 after dinner, TK said as Carlos and TK stepped into their loft. And you're on medical leave. I want you resting on the bed, so don't let me catch you doing any work on your laptop, you got it? TK ordered, pointing his index finger at Carlos. Yes, Dr. Strand, I heard you loud and clear for the 100th time. Carlos rolled his eyes as he made his way to the couch. Ooh, I kinda like the sound of that. Dr. Strand kinda has a nice ring to it. TK teases and joined Carlos on the couch, resting his head on Carlos's shoulder. Carlos kissed TK on his head and they stayed silent. They took a moment to appreciate the silence, feeling grateful to be back home safe. But this prolonged silence led Carlos deeper into his thoughts. Today was supposed to be our wedding. Carlos broke the silence. TK turned his head to Carlos with a frown. Babe, it's okay. We can have our wedding another day. All that matters is you are safe. TK rubbed his hands on Carlos's face. And right now, I need you to rest. It's not okay, TK. I ruined it, Carlos said. His serious tone of voice prompted TK to sit up. Carlos, you didn't ruin anything. You were shot. And whoever that shot you ruined it. TK tried to reason with Carlos. Your dad's working with the APD and investigations are happening right now. I'm sure they'll get to the bottom of this. I don't know, TK, Carlos said as he rubbed his chin. Whoever it is that wants me killed could be anyone I've arrested in the past. Maybe it might be from the last case I've been working on. Carlos let out a sigh. Maybe I should quit my job. Babe, where is this coming from? You love your job. Why would you quit? TK said as he grabbed onto Carlos's hand. Because it's putting you in danger, TK, and I can't allow that, Carlos said. Your job isn't putting anyone in danger, babe. I'm right here. I'm safe. TK tried to keep a calm tone of voice as he sensed the conversation was heating up. Damn it, TK. You could have been the one who got shot. Carlos raised his voice, pulling his hand away from TK. I don't care, TK yelled. As long as I'm with you, I don't care if I'm in danger. But I care, TK. I care that I'm putting you in danger, Carlos yelled as he stood up, eyes watering with heavy breathing. You know what? Whoever that tried to kill me should have shot me dead. Because if I am dead, you could just move on with someone else. Someone who wouldn't put your life in danger. Hey, that's not fair. Why would you think that it would be easy for me to move on if you're dead? TK stood up and matched Carlos's energy. You're my whole world. And the only reason I feel safe. The only reason I could be myself. There was never a time that crossed my mind to leave you. Yeah? Then what was it that was engraved on the pen that you gave me? Come home safe. That's what it says. Isn't that because you don't feel safe? Because my job is putting both of us in danger, Carlos said, recalling the words that was engraved on the pens that TK gifted for Valentine's Day. I just wanted to remind you to be safe, so you return home to me every day. I'm a paramedic and a firefighter. Don't you ever forget that. I know what it's like being in dangerous situations all the time. And every time I'm out there, you're the only thing that reminds me I have something to come home to, TK said. They both shared a moment of silence to collect themselves and catch their breaths. Carlos couldn't look TK in the eyes because he realized that he misunderstood what TK was trying to say. He knew TK was hurt by his words and regretted raising his voice. I printed that because I'm selfish, okay? Because if you're dead, I can't see myself living the rest of my life without you. I just love you too much, Carlos. Is it wrong for me to love you too much? TK said with a soft, depressed tone of voice and headed for the front door. Carlos wasn't looking in that direction and didn't realize TK was leaving the loft until he heard the door slide open. Baby, wait. As soon as Carlos said that, it was too late. TK had shut the front door and left. Carlos couldn't find the courage to chase after TK. He thought that TK would be too upset to forgive him. He sat alone in silence on the couch, reflecting on the words that TK said. It was the first time TK left the house without giving him a kiss. Carlos was broken and felt weak on his chest. How could I be so stupid? How could I say all of that to hurt the man I love? To the man who would do everything to fight for me? What if he doesn't want me anymore? What if he doesn't come home? Thoughts clouded Carlos's head for over an hour, figuring out the right words to say and how to ask TK for forgiveness.
Hey, it's TK. I'm probably saving lives right now, but just busy loving Carlos. Leave a message and I'll call you back soon.
TK didn't reply to his text messages or calls. Carlos grew desperate, wishing for TK to come home. Carlos jumped out of the couch and ran for the door as soon as he heard a knock. TK, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have said that. Carlos stopped himself as soon as he opened the door and realized that it was his colleague, Donnie, standing at the door instead of TK. Donnie, Carlos said, confused that Donnie showed up at the loft.
Hey man, I heard about what happened. Just thought that I should drop by to see how you're doing. Can I come in?
Donnie said. Carlos widened the door to invite Donnie to come in.
TK not around?
Donnie said as he placed his briefcase on the coffee table and took a seat on the couch. Yeah, he went out to see if he can work something out with the wedding planners. Carlos lied, trying to hide the fact that they fought on their supposed wedding day. We couldn't postpone or get a refund for our wedding, Carlos said, trying to fake a smile. I'll get you a glass of water. Donnie's heart shattered when he heard Carlos say that. He watched as Carlos walked into the kitchen and rested his hands on the sink, froze deep in thoughts for a minute before pulling out a glass on the cabinet. Donnie fought the urge to pry about their relationship when Carlos came back to hand him a glass of water.
Thanks. Hey, Carlos. I did some digging.
Donnie said as he picked up a file and flipped it open. Carlos joined him on the couch and listened attentively.
We found a bullet shell within the trees at Lake Bastrop. We tracked it to where it was purchased, and guess who purchased it?
Donnie and Carlos shared a moment of silence as they looked into each other's eyes.
Dominic Reeves, your suspect's father.
What? No way, Carlos said, picking up the file and flipping through the pages. Wait, how do you get all of this?
I might have snuck into the captain's office when he's out on lunch.
Donnie, this might get you into trouble, Carlos said.
Hey, I know you want answers, and I know you want to be a part of this investigation.
Donnie said.
And, well, I'm not really the leave my partner in the dark kind of guy.
Donnie smiled at Carlos.
But that's not all. Look what else I found.
Donnie said as he picked up another file and flipped it open.
Jonathan Reeves, our suspect who got away. Did some time in prison for robbery and drug trafficking.
But why would his father want to kill me as soon as he gets out of the hospital? Carlos said as he puts on his reading glasses, flipping through the pages of the file.
I don't know how these things work. Maybe a bullet for a bullet?
Donnie, are you heading anywhere? Carlos asked Donnie. He was eager to start piecing together the clues and evidence. Donnie looked at his watch, lifted his shoulders and turned to Carlos to say,
I got time.
Several hours went by. Donnie fell asleep on the couch. The coffee table was messy with several files and a plate of half-eaten oven-heated pizza. Carlos was on his laptop searching through Jonathan Reeves' social media. His eyes widened when he stumbled on his profile with a status update that shares the passing of his father, Dominic Reeves. Donnie! Carlos nudged Donnie to wake him up. Take a look at this.
Oh shit! I didn't know his dad didn't make it.
A funeral was held the day I got shot, Carlos said. He paused and then turned his face to look at Donnie in the eyes. So that means I killed his father. Thank you for listening. We have come to the end of episode 2. Stick around to the end to get a sneak peek for episode 3. Subscribe to get a notification as soon as it's released. Chat with me on Twitter at Spaces and Shadows. I'd love to connect with all of you and hear what are your thoughts on this episode. Take care, be kind to one another, and I'll see you next week.
And now, a preview for the next episode of 911 Lone Star by Spaces and Shadows.
Your dad is a Texas Ranger?
The APD isn't sharing information, and they don't want us involved in the case. I made a mistake. I killed his father. Just stick to heartfelt and apologize. TK, I'm so sorry. I thought you weren't gonna come home tonight. I made a promise that I'll come home to you every day. I want you to do the same for me. Promise me. I promise. Carlos, you want to put yourself out there with no backup? You sure this is the right place? They know we're here.
All new episode, coming soon, only on YouTube.